Moving on to the next one, technology supply chain planning session that will be conducted by Mr. Manish Kumar, CTO of 3CS Solutions. He holds 15 years of extensive experience across industries, retail, e-commerce, CPG, logistics, fintech, data analytics, artificial intelligence, data visualizations, customer analytics, and telematics. Prior to this, he has worked with Tesco, HCL Technologies, and Accenture. With a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, may we please invite Mr. Manish Kumar.
Thanks. Which is the pointer?
This is the next and this is the pointer.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I am the only speaker between you and your tea break, so I'll keep it on time. Thank you for the introduction. This topic is about what are the technology enablers or the technology trends that we have in today's industry in the space of improving our supply planning. And it's a very concise presentation. I'll just speak about those. I'll start with, some of you may not know about us, so I'll start about introducing my organization and then jump into what are the key trends that we are seeing, and specifically we'll pick up one of the technology enablers and focus on that and zoom in on that. So with that, very quick introduction about 3SC. We were formed in 2012 and have now sort of expanded across the globe, headquartered in Gurgaon, but we do have offices in Europe, and in India we have offices in Pune, as well as we are setting up offices in the southeast, and we do have satellite offices across the globe in multiple parts of the globe. Now a team of 250 people, and focused on 3 key pillars. I'm sure some of you may not be able to see what's written below, so I'll voice it over. So we as an organization have 3 key pillars. Analytics as a service, which is where we have a team of data scientists who basically pick up use cases from the customers and provide them analytics as a service. They cut across the typical data science practices of descriptive, predictive, prescriptive analytics. Then we have software as a service as one of our key pillars. This is where we have developed products, SaaS products, which will enable organizations to improve their supply chain planning, use those products to improve the planning, be it demand planning, replenishment planning, production planning, and the whole 9 yards. We also have a product called Visilog, which is right here, which helps organizations in improving their supply chain execution, right from transport management to order management to freight bill audits, import, export, and so on. And then the other service that we have is Global Control Tower as a service, which is in the 4PL space. With that, we have an overarching product called Sustainability as a Service, which is where we enable the organizations to actually measure their carbon footprint across their supply chain and also figure out ways and means of how to improve in this space, which is built upon all of this put together. As many of the speakers before have mentioned, that sustainability, and Guru particularly mentioned that, sustainability is a very key important theme for most of the organizations today to measure and improve on. So with that, now a lot has been spoken in the last few presentations on there is a storm that has happened in the supply chain. There are disruptions, there are supply chain network issues, and be it because of COVID, be it because of the war, be it because of the food insecurity and labor shortages, migrations, all kinds of things are causing disruptions to the supply chain. And that basically means that we have no choice but to adopt technology, and not just technology as an enabler. I strongly believe it has to be technology as a differentiator. Technology is what will differentiate. So if you look at this Gartner study, it essentially talks about the different, it has sort of done the usual research of supply chain professionals to find out what they think is of importance in terms of technology and what they think is where the investment is going in terms of technology. Now, obviously, these technology areas, they keep juggling between these boxes as things are evolving. But very clearly, the advanced data analytics, artificial intelligence and machine learning, digital twin, blockchain. I think Mr. Ketan spoke very well about the tracking the raw material of the raw materials, which is where the digital twin comes in and now becoming very important, or its importance being understood now. So there's quite a bit of investment that is happening in the space of technology, a lot of products for people, the supply chain professionals to use. For the sake of this presentation, just to keep it sort of concise, I will particularly focus on AI and ML. And because quite a bit of it has already been spoken in the last few presentations, I will try to sort of highlight some of the additional points on top of what has been covered. So if you look at traditional ways of, even with the adoption of some level of technology, some level of data science that has already been in place over the last 5 years, some of the, if you look at the typical life cycle of supply planning or applying ML or traditional data science models, it all starts from data collection. We discussed that in the previous presentation. Correcting the data, then clustering the demand, moving on to applying the right features, variables, building the forecast, and then going to the top of the value curve, which is about demand sensing. So what we have seen is that with humans doing it by way of doing some data modeling on their laptops and various other means, they can only do so much. There is only that ability or amount of what they can churn and digest. But the moment we move to machine learning, it expands the horizons. The art of the possibilities kicks in. And what data collection, accuracy of the data, well spoken in the presentation just before. We have to get the right data, as much data as possible, as much of the history as possible, to really get a good data set for the machine learning algorithms to use. And then we have to remove the noise from the data. Particularly in the last 2 years, there's a lot of noise in the data. The patterns are just becoming difficult to understand, difficult to recognize. So a lot of outliers have to be removed. A lot of disruptions that led to supply chain blockades, which led to sales going very dramatically up or down. We have to analyze that and rationalize that. So the next one is clustering. Now, this is where the algos really bring the brain behind the scenes. A human being can maybe look at a few variables, but as we look at a machine learning algorithm can really do a lot of segmentation in different ways to look at data from different lenses. It also looks at many other variables like weather, like economic indicators, what's happening in the rest of the globe, the political elements which are influencing supply chains across the globe. And then does the rest of the feature engineering, looking at all the exogenous endogenous parameters and the right dimensions. Now, what algos would typically do is, they would, we can use multiple algos, try to push the data against all of them, and they would come back and say, for this kind of data set, class, subclass, product category, location hierarchy, this is the algo that works best, and for the next one, this works best. And therefore, the model would try and use the ensemble method, as it is called, to figure out what's the best algo, and which are the best variables to look at. Not every variable has to be looked at in the same light or with the same lens. Then building the forecast, and then particularly important, top of the chain, demand sensing. We have to be able to react to short-term demand changes that are coming up. And this is what I believe, as a whole, leads to a lot of reduction in manual interventions, to looking at the data single source of the truth from this dimension, increasing the accuracy of the forecast, obviously so, but also it leads to a very important thing. Once the supply chain professionals start using this, the confidence in adopting technology comes in play. And that is where it is, see, a lot of the professionals here, sitting here as well, may be uncertain, will this help me or not, right? This is where, once we go this direction, that confidence will kick in. So this is one of the use cases that I just wanted to showcase, where one of the largest FMCG companies in India partnered us to help improve their forecast accuracy and improve their demand planning. They have huge SKU base. The usual classic problems of heterogeneous data, unable to identify the entire life cycle from the upstream all the way to the downstream, and be able to then look at which are my power SKUs, how am I managing the supply plan for those versus not the other ones, the raw material for the raw material, and so on. Once we implemented our solutions and products, what you see at the bottom here is that they achieved a 11% improvement in forecast accuracy. Now, for an organization of this size, an overall 11% really means big numbers. And they were able to do that in a short span of time, which is very important, and I'll speak that in the sort of the next slide. But if you look at the components of what led them to the 11%, some of them are directly by application of machine learning algorithms, and some of them are collateral benefits that come in because you have applied those machine learning algorithms. So, for example, if you just look at the demand sensing, that led to 3% improvement, which is pretty significant. It also leads to a very important collateral benefit, which is about availability and waste. For any company, ensuring that their products are available to the customers is very important, because if the customers don't get your product, they'll go to some other company, right? You don't want to lose a customer, and you don't want to waste. It's a very well-known, established element. So doing the right demand sensing, it just not only led to 3% improvement on the forecast accuracy, it's actually very good for customer retention. So a lot of collateral benefits, but 11% itself is a very big number for such an organization. So with that, I'll sort of, my last slide, so that we have some space for Q&A. What should we do? How should we go about it? I'm a strong protagonist for start small and aim for early wins. This is really important. And even in the world of Tesco, where I used to be, and Tesco was a third largest retailer in the world, as I was heading the engineering there, we used to start small. We didn't want to boil the ocean and start getting into a major implementation, IT product implementation project in a 2-year roadmap or a 1-year roadmap, and then not have the patience to wait for the wins to come in. So there could be possibilities, and obviously this one point doesn't fit everybody, but there are possibilities where you can look at starting small. Many of our customers, they reach out to us, take the services from our analytics as a service team, take one use case, and they say, can you prove it works, right? And that gives the confidence to the organization to start looking at what, investing further in it. So that is where organizations can start building the business case to further expand the use cases, bring in a lot of technology and organizational changes, and also important is that all the organizations, all of us, need to sort of enable our people to reimagine the business as usual. This is really important, because if we don't do that, whatever we want to do, we may be investing in technology, we'll be investing in organization changes, we are really not going to, the way the business used to run before is not the way the businesses will run or the supply chains will run in the future. So just very key few takeaways for this group. Start small so that you get some early wins, you get the confidence, and you are able to showcase the confidence within your organization, to your board, to your senior management, to the leadership of the organization. Empower some key people so that they can reimagine the business. Third is build the business cases to go for further use cases, for taking or investments in the technology and whatever changes that you need in the organization. With that, that was my last slide. My team is here, my colleagues are here, number of them, their faces you can see. So if you want to sort of catch up over the lunch and just generally get to know more about us, feel free to connect with all of them or with me. And with that, I'll take some questions. So we do have five minutes. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, thank you for the presentation, really nice one. My name is Janil and I'm from General Mills. So I have one question. So when we spoke about demand sensing and 3% improvement over that, would you help us and understand a bit more on the factors in demand sensing that you thought the company was lagging behind and what you could bring to the table?
Sure. See, in some sense, they were not doing demand sensing in the way you would do it. It was based on people brilliance and not based on a process brilliance or adoption of the technology, which the adoption of the technology brought into the play. But having said that, particularly in the last 2 years, demand sensing has become very important. We all know that. And particularly in the FMCG space, it has moved quite a bit. It has varied quite a bit, and not just by the period of time, but also based on regions and locations. One location may have lockdowns and demand just goes off the whack versus other locations. So what this led to is that this solution and which was implemented in this FMCG company allowed them, their planners, to understand the challenges, or it allowed them to sense the demand in different locations, be able to then push the inventory at the right places at the right time. And rather than pushing inventory in a general format that I used to send 100 units in north and 100 units in south and 50 in east, they would now be able to adjust because everybody is short of inventory because of raw material issues, right? So where do you send your inventory so that your availability issues are well taken care of in the short term, and optimize that rather than just pushing it out in the usual pattern that used to be there. So that is what really led to, if that answers your question.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, yes.
Hello, this is Ravi Atal from ACC and Ambuja Cements. I work in supply chain here. So I was just trying to understand, when I visited the website as well. So just wanted to understand how the dynamics play into the reverse logistics scheme. So primarily in context of India. So yes, we can forecast demands basis on that, but a lot of things also has to be mitigated through supplies. So is there any solution related to that is available with 3SC and all? Just wanted to understand that part.
So is your question that do we have a solution for reverse logistics?
Yeah, and in generally, how do you tackle it? You might be working with some other firms and all. So as of I am aware, it's very fragmented transportation system in the India. So for a developing country like India, what in general people can do to sort of integrate both forward and reverse logistics systems?
Yep. So transport management systems in India, the adoption is not that great. I agree with you. And where it is adopted, it is perhaps, where it is implemented, they are still challenged in deriving the best out of it. And therefore, part of Visilog, our product, what we have tried to do is we have tried to build for India. So we have sort of two flavors of our product. There is one for India in the current state of how supply chains runs in India with the reality of what it is in India, versus a global version as well, which we have implemented in other countries like Europe, etc., which are much more sort of matured in their supply chains. So the key challenges in India, obviously, availability of standardizing the vehicles to looking at workforce maturity and availability, etc., adds a lot of variables in the whole process. Now, I'm not the best transport management guy. I'm, by the way, a CTO. So, but having said that, that is what, from a product perspective, we have tried to do. I don't know I've answered your question, but maybe one of our gurus, I'll point you to one of our gurus later, who can then get a little deeper on this with you.
Yeah, thank you for insight.
Yeah, I also have a question.
Yeah.
In your sequence of events, you had mentioned that first of all we go to the demand clustering part, then we go to the variable selection part. That means first of all clustering happens, then the supervised part. So first of all unsupervised part, then the supervised part happens.
It could flip also. Just for the representation purposes, but it depends on the nature of the data. So my first preference would always be let the algos come up with their recommendations. And then if we find that there is an intervention required, right, that's when I would do the intervention as well. But sometimes we already understand the data and some of the variables and features which we would want to tell the algo upfront itself in a supervised way, so that it doesn't go haywire. I think this is a generalized one, but for industry, based on the data, based on some initial pattern recognition, one can take a judgment call there.
Okay, but in one of the previous slides also there was a sequence that in unsupervised and supervised thing happens. So my question was that once we have in the maturity sequence, once we have moved from unsupervised to supervised, that is we have done the clustering part for all the SQs and all the things and identified the parameters. Yeah. Is that clustering a fixed kind of thing for a future limited time period, or we need to go back to the clustering and reclustering of various SQs, because it's a dynamic world. So yeah, how does that maturity goes from level 4 to level 3 back? How does that PDCA happens?
See, my experience, again, and in my previous firm also, Algonomy, where I was working in it was a data science product company, and we had about 200 odd retailers who were sort of our customers. The experience has been that there is no product, in my opinion, which is out of box, unwrap it, implement it, it will solve the problem. It doesn't work in this space. There will have to be some level of human intervention by way of data scientists. So we even in my previous firm, even in my current firm, we have a bunch of data scientists who actually handhold some of these implementations by way of bringing the element of consulting into the implementation. So therefore, every implementation tends to have its own custom flavor to it. There's the product, which is pretty standard. Then you configure the product based on the organization, the nature of the business, the domain, etc. But then this is once the data is already fed in and quality has been ascertained, that is when the data scientists have to use the as-is product to see what is coming out, go do a few iterations, enhance the algos as needed, or enhance the ensembles as needed, so that the right fitment happens. So I think better than a sequence, it should have been some part of it is cyclic. That has been my experience for all successful implementations. There will never be a a standard demand planning application that will work for maybe a grocery retailer versus a fashion retailer versus a specialty retailer. And within specialty retailers, you may be selling watches, or you may be selling jewelry, or very high-end gems. So it has to be handheld, babysitted to that extent by the data science team. And some level of iterations are always going to happen. If you really want the value to come out, a standard product will never be able to solve that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Manish sir, for this insightful presentation. For the felicitation, may I please invite Mahesh Ketan, Mr. Mahesh Ketan ahead.
Hello,
Manish sir, this is a small token of appreciation from UBS. Thank you so much for this insightful presentation. We really appreciate